everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for Ask the Expert in North Texas. I'm Kristen Diaz.
I'm David Rankin. Unemployment is down. Inflation seems to be slowing, and all of this in time for the holidays. But what do the current figures predict for 2024 and beyond? On today's Ask the Expert, we're joined by Heather Boushey. She is a member of the President's Council of Economic Advisors. She is the chief economist for Invest in America, and she is in the KRLD Zoom room. Heather, thank you so much for taking the time.
My pleasure. Happy to be here.
New poll out finds more than half of the country right now believes inflation is the biggest issue that our country is facing, bigger than unemployment, immigration, or crime. Is that a misperception?
Well, here's the thing. Prices rose because of the pandemic and the associated shocks to the economy, to supply chains. And then you add, of course, on top of that, Putin's unprovoked war in the Ukraine that upended global energy prices. It's been tough out there for consumers and families because of high prices. But, a few things. We have seen the pace of prices fall by about 2/3 since their peak. That is certainly good news. Last month, prices didn't rise. So that is certainly important and gives, families a little bit of breathing room that we're seeing these things come back down. And of course, we know that for some things that people buy, prices are actually falling. So the price of a turkey dinner was lower than it was last year, and a number of typical grocery items, eggs, milk, cheddar cheese, these are all lower than they were last year. But that doesn't change the fact that prices rose. They were high, and that has been a hard thing for families. But here's the thing. The president is focused on lowering prices and doing what he could, but also on making sure that we keep the economy moving forward. We have now seen that the unemployment rate has been lower than 4% for a record 21 months. We have not seen that kind of streak in low unemployment in over half a century. And what that means is millions of people who have jobs today who wouldn't otherwise, at the end, if we hadn't gotten the unemployment rate down, it means that they're not experiencing the scarring to their careers and their incomes. And this kind of scarring can last a lifetime. So we have to, coming out of a global pandemic was a really challenging economy, but we've really come through it in many ways very well. And we need to continue to work to bring prices down. But we are, it was especially important to get people back to work. And then so when I hear polls that say that people are more worried about prices than jobs, I'm like, well, that's good. People have jobs. That's not something they're worried about. They're worried about, given the income that they have, can they afford the things they need? But they had to have that first thing. And so we're really glad that we have seen that job creation. We continue to work to bring prices down.
What are some of the federal programs that are available for Texans to be able to help themselves when it comes to, putting food on the table and paying their bills?
Well, I think the first thing that we look at is, folks being able to get there and get those jobs, as we've talked about. And then, of course, there are things to help folks at the very bottom end of the income distribution. So programs like food stamps, or making sure it's, if they need it for their children, being able to get health care and the like. So there are some things like that. The president has been really focused on, making sure that we create those jobs all across the country. One of the things that we've seen through his Invest in America agenda is that the new investments that are going out across the country have been disproportionately going to communities. And when I'm actually talking not just the public sector investments, but the private investments that we've induced through our historic public sector investments, these private sector investments are going into places that need it most. And so when you ask about families that need a little bit of help, I'm thinking about the map that we've been talking about over here at the White House, that my colleagues over at Treasury put together, that shows that these investments are disproportionately going to lower income communities that need that investment the most, fossil fuel energy communities and like. So I think that's one of the things that the president is really focused on, making sure that we're making investments all across America for all of America.
Talk about the cooperation that you get with the state of Texas and with other states in advancing the information that you're talking about here.
Well, so we do a lot to try to make sure that this economic data is available to folks around the country. There's been a lot of work to make sure that the kinds of the policies that we're putting in place, the bipartisan infrastructure law, what that means for infrastructure projects all across the country, that we're breaking that out state by state, and that those, the people that are implementing it know like how to access those funds, but also people can see what that means in terms of the number of bridges or the number of roads, or importantly, getting getting lead out of water service lines, or making sure that everybody has access to the internet. So we spend a lot of time making these making fact sheets available so that we can see that information, but also talking to folks like you so that we can talk about what's going on in the overall economy and how that affects Americans all across the country.
Governor Abbott, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick here in Texas, they might have a different opinion about the role that the federal government has played on bringing down inflation in Texas. What do you have to say about, or what do you think they would have to say about their role in this?
Well, inflation is a tricky issue in terms of who's what layer of government, right? Ultimately, we rely on the Federal Reserve, which is an independent agency, and I'm not in any way commenting on Fed policy. Their role is to set interest rates, and so they have a key role to play in inflation. But the federal government has a key role as well, and the president has been using all of his tools to make sure that markets are fair and competitive. So, one of the examples early on in the pandemic, we realized that one of the real pain points for families when they were buying goods was the really high price of shipping. And that's because actually ocean shipping is dominated by three conglomerates, and they had massively increased prices during the pandemic. So the president worked with the administration, then worked with Congress to get legislation passed to do something about that. And we've seen those ocean shipping prices come back down. That's something that only the federal government can do. But state governors, they have responsibility regulating some sectors and some industries and may have those tools. But, we're focused here on what we can do to make sure that we're lowering prices, making sure that supply chains are functional, making sure goods can move from one place to another without these overly jacked up prices or with things not working the way that they should, and making sure that we're making the investments so that people can have access to affordable things that are really important, like energy. The president is making these enormous investments in clean energy to make sure that we all have energy that we have access to it on a regular basis, and it's affordable.
Heather Boushey is from the Council of Economic Advisors, the chief economist for Invest in America. Heather, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you.